Welcome to the MOOC course on Human Rights and Urbanization. Both human rights and urbanization are vast topics in themselves, but we will be understanding the various human rights issues that come up when we have a process of urbanization. So, let us understand the concept of human rights. Firstly, what we see is human rights are rights which are universal in nature. It applies to every human being. So, they are the basic rights of men and women, and they are important for all regardless of their caste, color, race, religion or even nationality. So, the human rights are essential for people to live a life of dignity and respect, which is very important for their existence. When we look at the efforts of various nations of the world, we see that the countries take best efforts to safeguard the rights of the citizens. So, you can see the various rights that are enshrined in the constitutions of the countries, so that the people get justice, and also in the making of the laws, the nations abide by rules so that the rights of people are safeguarded. Not only nationally, even internationally, what we see is there has been a lot of effort taken to uphold the rights of people, for them to live a life of dignity, and we have various international conventions and we have the International Declaration to safeguard and even to define and to safeguard human rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations in 1948, and it recognized that the inherent dignity and the equal and inalienable rights of all people is the foundation of freedom, justice and peace in the world. It proclaimed that the UDHR would be a common standard of achievement of all people and all nations. The UDHR has 30 articles which pertain to human rights of people, which include the right of all humans to be born free and equal in dignity, and everyone is also entitled the right and freedom without distinction of any kind. It ensures the right to life, liberty and security of people, and also it speaks about no one shall be held in slavery. These are all basic rights that enable people to live their life with dignity and with security. According to these articles, we see that all are equal before law and no one can be subjected to arbitrary arrest or detention. To mention a few more articles, we see that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home or correspondence. So, even a right to privacy is a human right, and everyone has the right to social security, which is again very important when people live in a society. With regard to the economic aspects, we see that the UDHR speaks about the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favorable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Everyone without any discrimination also has the right to equal pay for equal work. All these pertains to the economic life of people. Everyone even has a right to rest and leisure, and the health and well-being is also mentioned in the UDHR, which includes food, clothing and medical care. Most importantly, the right to education is studied because it pertains to children and it becomes a basic requirement. So, all of these rights, as we understand, they become very important for people for their development, and when people are living in a society, it becomes a necessity that they live a good life, a safe life and a healthy life, which is very important. Secondly, as citizens of any nation, what we see is they are asking for certain rights, certain political rights, so that they are able to live under the right government. So this has been recognized internationally, and these efforts have been taken where nations of the world have to abide, or they have accepted these basic rights as fundamental or important for the people of the world. So coming to the national scenario, as it is accepted worldwide, the recognition of the human rights. With regard to India, what we see is we have our own constitution, we have the list of fundamental rights, which is enshrined in part 3 of the constitution, and you have the list of directive principles of state policy, which is given in part 4 of the constitution. So both of these sections, what we see is they pertain to rights again. Now that we have a topic on human rights, and we will try to understand it in relation to urbanization that will follow, but here we are trying to have a little more of an understanding of how the rights are mentioned or are defined. So internationally, we have seen the efforts of the international body, especially UDHR, and as we got our independence, the Indian constitution, the constitution makers in the Constituent Assembly, there was an elaborate debate on and the work that went into making of the constitution, as we know, and in the making of the constitution, a list of rights were decided. So as the list became very long, they had to divide it into some rights into justiciable rights and some rights as non-justiciable rights. So these rights which come under the fundamental rights, the different kinds of rights under that category, they became justiciable rights, where we can claim it from the court of law, and under that comes the basic principles like right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation. And under the directive principles, what we see is there are again a list of rights which we call them as non-justiciable, and when they fall under part 4 category, what we see is the governments have to take efforts to implement these policies in due course of time. It is a guideline for the government, and the guideline is to realize a just society, a welfare state. It is to ensure socio-economic justice. Directive principles of state policy will ensure socio-economic justice, so that gradually these rights get implemented, and we have a society where the people live a good life and they enjoy their human rights in the right way. Next, we also look into some of the legal rights, because some rights which did not fall under fundamental right, again they are legal rights. So these 3 different kinds of rights, they relate to how human rights gets realized, and how people are able to enjoy, or they are able to get their rights are safeguarded, most important. So we have understood to some extent the rights perspective. We move on to urbanization as we discuss it now. So urbanization is a process which is not new, right? It has been there for years long, and it also is universal. As we are saying that human rights is universal, urbanization is also universal, where all nations, most of the nations of the world are undergoing the process, where people do not station, or they don't stay at one place, they want to move on, and they want to get migrated to places where they have better opportunities, better job opportunities, better living conditions. So it is a process, and it is happening continuously. So this shift that happens from probably the rural areas, from backward areas, to places where there are better opportunities for people to find newer jobs. So what happens is, when the process of urbanization happens, there is a lot of change happening. Firstly, people start settling down at different places wherever it is convenient for them. So there is no pattern. That could be one of the characteristic of urbanization. To some extent, there are certain things which are uniform with regard to urbanization, but when it comes to the space and to demography and living conditions and etc., there may not be a pattern, but there is one reality that it expands the city. So the population of the city would definitely increase, and you have different kinds of people living, coming to the city, settling down in the cities and taking up varied kind of jobs. So the impact of that is definitely on the environment. It is on the economy, because they find jobs, different kinds of jobs. It could be mostly organized in the organized sectors or in the unorganized sectors. So it is people who are going to play a role, and we are trying to understand human rights with relation to urbanization. So when this happens, when this movement happens, there is a lot of dynamism and lot of activity happening. It has both a positive impact and also a negative impact, as we understand positive and negative impact of urbanization. So that is, they are topics of discussion where it leads to development on one hand, and people to look into, get more opportunities to know more things, look at life differently. Whatever was available or there in a rural setup is entirely different, and when they come out to cities, what they see is they are seeing newer places. Affordability is the next question, that again pertains to different strata of society. The different class of people have their own way of doing things or getting educated, or if it is, even if it is recreation, anything, they have their own way of doing it. And also it's a big challenge of the planning, urban planning. When we talk about urbanization, urban planning is a great challenge where the government is again involved, because anything happens, the government has to take care of the needs of the people. So local administration has a big challenge when it comes to the big cities, where more and more people are pouring in every day. That's the point, right? Even they are not worried about their ID cards, or at the time they decide to shift to another city, they are right there first searching for their employment. Later they think of any other identity that they may require, right? They relate mostly to the employer or any kind of job that they may have they may know from others as to what kind of opportunities are available in any city. So this poses a big task to the local administration, and over a period of time there has been more and more effort towards handling the problem of, it is not a problem, handling the process of urbanization, how the government and the people are going to handle the process of urbanization. And we also see the UN Sustainable Goals talking about sustainable cities, inclusive city, so safe cities. So all of that becomes a big concern for the international community, though it is happening in every country and the conditions are different. End of the day, it is an international concern. So they are talking about sustainable urbanism, so that it happens. You can't stop, or you should not stop, because it would pertain to development. But what happens is, let it be sustainable, let it go on for long years, let the resources be used for the generations to come. So these two become two aspects, and as we move on to understand the rights perspective relating to urbanization, we will be covering the topics on child rights, youth rights and women's rights. So starting with the child rights, we see that children's right pertains to special care and protection of children or minors, and it relates to the right of children to have security of life, health care, food, education and freedom from discrimination, exploitation, cruel, inhuman, degrading treatment and torture, because the child is of the young age and there is less opportunity for the child to sometime go against or fight against a problem in case he or she faces it. So, the children are a great concern of the human community, and children of different class of the society, they have their own conditions and issues. So, when we are talking about urbanization and the condition of urban children, what we see is there are again two sections where there are parents who are working in organized sectors, they are educated parents, they have to migrate from their hometown to the cities due to compulsion of getting their jobs in the cities. So, here the children, the rich children have a better opportunity to get proper education, formal education, and they also have good care because of the varied opportunities that are there. But at the same time, though all these opportunities are there, what we see is even these children have issues where firstly probably they don't grow up with the environment. A rural area gives more opportunity for people to live with the environment, to live with nature. So, here the first challenge comes where you have to fix up a proper time for a sports activity, or it is all done in a voluntary way, whereas when people are in the rural areas, it is a way of life for them. So, the children are again in a pressure, probably the present systems have to be revisited and have to be modified, but children would have to take up the pressure. Sometimes it is even the pressure from the own family or from the parents, and you have a lot of distractions that they have today, like they have an access to lot of online resources and the media and all of that. So, what happens is, though they are economically they do not have to worry much, but what they see is they are into some kind of pressure where they need more of a play time or more of an orientation for more time to spend with regard to their leisure and things like that. So, their demands are more, there is more demand, and because of that the challenges come up where sometimes they are not able to express it very openly even to their own families. Coming to the poor, they are the people more disadvantaged because the basics are themselves, basic needs themselves are not met. So, there is a question mark on education. When it comes to migration, at least if they were in a rural area, you have their government schools and things are happening. But when it is coming to the urban area, firstly the parents themselves would have come searching for some kind of job, which may not be a big one, a very organized one. It could be some daily wage, or it could even be a condition where they are moving from one place to another. So, what happens is the child may not have an opportunity to go to a school when it comes to enjoying a right to education as it is told, UDHR, or so that challenge comes up. Then comes living conditions and health and sanitation, housing. So, all these are issues which children may not be able to handle in the right way, and when there is no adequate income, definitely problems of malnutrition and even no care. They may not, the parents may not be in a position to be with the child, to care for the child. So, what happens is the children are sometimes neglected, they are on their own. So, when they are on their own, they may pick up friends, or they may pick up some wrong habits. So, with regard to the children, when there is no direction or when there is no proper care, especially to the urban poor, poverty becomes a big issue. So, that has to be handled. So, when along with that you have children who are sometimes abandoned, families cannot take care or they do not know how to handle the situation. So, abandoned children are there, and one big issue that happens is relating to child labor. Some children would go to work, they have to work, the parents would send them to some work because they are here due to poverty. So, if the child is of that age where he or she can go and work, so that is also allowed, and sometimes the safety of the child is in stake. They could be in some hazardous industry where they are working, and the child does not realize the money, even the money that the child is going to earn, the child will have to come and give back to the parent. That is what is seen. And the safety issue, where especially the being a girl child is an added disadvantage, because the safety issue becomes a big problem, and they do not know, or they can be exploited, they can be led to prostitution, and drug abuse and all that becomes very easy, access to certain kind of drugs. So, that again the addiction problem happens, or sometimes they even become drug peddlers, where if they get a little money, they are happy, something they are not going to do anything else, they will just go and buy something and eat if possible. So, that is something which is a great concern. So, when we talk about so many rights to be safeguarded of the children, we understand that all this is big challenge, because a lot of effort has to be taken to understand, to find out, to get a statistics of how people are moving out, and getting the statistics again becomes a challenge, because they are not settled at one place, they are moving continuously. So, these conditions are problems with regard to the children, the child rights. And there is one more big problem, which is that of street children. You have children who are mostly in the street. So, they are children who spend more of their time in the street only. So, probably they have made the street their home, and they may go back in the night to some very not very safe settlement. If the parents are there, they will go back. So, the street children, we can see many children begging, or sometimes selling small things, but again they have to go back and give the money to the parent. So, they do not know, there is no supervision. The street children are children who have no one to control them or supervise them. So, these are big challenges of urban poor who have come here in search of jobs. So, that is something which has to be handled, or it has to be studied extensively to understand the protect, because every child is precious and every child is important. These issues become important. Next, talking about the youth, another big category and a very potential force, because what we see is youth is a period where there is a transition from childhood to adulthood. So, it is a very potential time, and it is a very important phase of an individual's life. So, what happens is, again, urbanization has its pros and cons and positives and negatives when it comes to the life of youth. Youth get a lot of opportunity to find new jobs, they are able to see new environment, they are able to understand new culture, all that is fine. But mostly the youth, in case they are migrating, they would be less educated or they would be unskilled. So, what happens is there is no big organized employment that is available to them. They will just go, and whatever jobs they get, they are ready to take it, and they may not be aware of any of their rights, because for them the money is important, extra hours of work is fine. They are not going to fight for their rights. So, that is something that is seen with the youth of especially the poor youth of the urban areas. Irrespective of rich or poor, one aspect that is seen very uniformly or common with the youth is problems of depression and anxiety. So they may not be very sure of what is their future, and there's always a peer pressure because they want to compete with people, and they are more worried about what would happen to them in the future. So again, addressing the issues of youth is, again, there is a right to privacy, but if you are going to talk about an urban poor youth, there is very less opportunity for all that, right? So similarly, urban poor girl children, they also have a lot of issues relating to safety and relating to the proper sanitation. So these are issues that can be identified with relating to the youth, the psychological and physical health issues, the safety and security issues, food security, very, very important. They should have adequate food to sustain. So if that itself becomes a challenge, or wrong food habits, even that sometimes whatever they get, they just eat, right? Unemployment, they are not sure about, there is no job security because they may not be, some may not be much educated. Homelessness, crime, which again, they are very vulnerable to so many things. Traffic and safety, cities are very congested, so they have to handle the crowd sometimes. Abuse and exploitation, sometimes even knowingly they get exploited because they don't have a choice. So how far the youth will enjoy the human rights, how we need to educate them, or what measures have to be taken, these are all subjects of study which many researchers can actually take up across the nation and across the world also. Thirdly, to run quickly with the women's rights, again, both the rich and the poor urban women have their own challenges, because it has the positive aspect of having, giving more opportunity for jobs, for making their choices, or even for leadership. We see that women organize themselves into some groups, they come together, they take up some entrepreneurial activity or something they do, even they get related to political parties, and they are ready to take up leadership. All that is possible, and probably if a city life is very busy, they don't have time for all that. But all of the urban women, due to the more opportunity and more demand, what we see is there is always an overwork when it comes to women. They have to balance work and home because they want to earn more. They want, when they see the opportunity right in front of them, they don't want to lose it. So they want to realize their potential, and they take up different kinds of jobs. Sometimes overnight they have to do their night duty. So balancing their work and home is a big challenge, which has an impact on their physical and their psychological health. Similarly, housing facilities, water and sanitation again are important ones, where if it is a very congested environment, it becomes a challenge. There is no adequate space. So all the human rights talk about all of these aspects, where we are living a happy life, we are living a safe life. So all that sometimes becomes challenge when it comes to urbanization, because at one place you have so many people coming together. And also sometimes the women may have restrictions in taking up certain kinds of jobs due to their domestic commitments. So the measures to be taken is, of course, the role of the government. Firstly, the government is already taking a lot of measures, but we will have to do more studies, and specific solutions may have to be sought for problems. So that becomes an important one. Similarly, we have many NGOs working for people. So their role, they also need to play a responsible role, and we need to empower people, because they themselves do not know about what is right or what they would want. So making them aware is a great task, and it's a big challenge. So more and more of these programs, and how grievance redressal mechanisms, how they should be made aware of the law, and they should get justice. So what can be done becomes important, and their protection is the most important aspect. So this is what we understand about how human rights issues can come up when it is urbanization, and it is a topic of more and more research and study to understand, because it keeps changing every day. The conditions keep changing. Thank you.